Happy to be here with you. Tell me when you gather because I want to make sure that everyone is here before the start of this social media review. Because, as you know, in the Fashion Photography podcast, we do. Oh, I can hear myself. That's so weird. Okay, so what we do is a portfolio review each and I'm sorry, not each and every Wednesday. I'm talking about the fashion photography podcast. And now I have to tell you about the reviews. We do portfolio reviews every other month, and they're completely free for you guys, the listeners of our show, the Fashion Photography Podcast. So let me see, because as you probably know, today I must be here with my guest. Kendra Paige. She's an amazing photographer and she's also part of our guest list. So you can actually listen to her interview at the Fashion Photography Podcast. If you're guys here, tell me whether you can hear me and how much you like this event and what else you would like to hear about today. Oh, while I'm waiting for my guest, I want to say big thank you to all of you guys that were brave enough to send me their social media accounts. It was super exciting to see how many people are so brave. I love it. Tell me how's the quality of this broadcast because it's very important for me to know. And while we are waiting, you can actually leave a thumbs up. Or if you haven't subscribed to this channel, you can do it right now. Okay, let me see your comments. Are you here, guys? Let me know how's the sound and how's everything. And by the way, you can always share this broadcast with all the photography lovers in your list. So we'll be very grateful if you decide to tell us what you love about it and what you don't. And of course, to share it with other people. Okay. So, um, I want to see your comments. Let me see if there are any. Sounds so good. Okay. Perfect, George. Thank you so much. Are there any other people here? Because I can see that many people are watching, so you have to leave me a comment, guys. Otherwise, I'm gonna feel like I'm all alone, and I won't have this desire to talk to myself, you know. I do this enough during the fashion photography podcast. But if you're here for the very first time because you're a subscriber to my channel, let me tell you about the Fashion Photography Podcast. This is a place where you can find everything you want and everything you need to learn about the fashion photography business. And also the place where every Wednesday you'll be able to hear an interview with another fellow photographer or makeup artist or somebody in the industry. And every other Friday, I'm giving you my tips and tricks and I'm answering your questions. And now I see that here finally is my gorgeous co-host because I cannot say guest because today we're here together. So Kendra, good to
Hello.
see you.
Good to see you as well.
Hi, how are you?
Doing great.
Doing great. Ready for this awesome adventure today that we're going
I
to have?
I hope so. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. I'm very interested to know how people are seeing all this. A little quiet here. Okay. Thank you. Am I quiet or is my co host quiet?
Am I quiet? I can keep talking. Just let me know how the volume is.
Okay. Let's see. How about now? Maybe I should say more that. Just how about now? I'm very happy to see that there are people commenting. I would like to ask you guys to comment during this whole conversation because it's very important for us both to be able to know what you would like to hear and you would like
Mhm.
to know. Okay, as far as I can see, you can see us both while we are talking, which is perfect. So,
That's important.
yeah, it is definitely. So we're kind of having this director, thanks to Google Hangouts, that are switching our our screens, which is very funny.
Okay.
I hope now you can hear us better. And what we are going to do today is to start with a little bit of conversation answering your questions. So if you guys have any questions about social media and why is this so important for
Mhm.
all the photographers and creators out there, do not hesitate to ask all of your questions while we're waiting for everyone to gather. And during this time, me and my gorgeous guests, we're going to have a little bit of conversation about the importance of social media. And what's your opinion on this, Kendra?
I mean, social media is really our calling cards these days. It's how we market. It's not so much about mailers. It's really your social media is your business card. It's your portfolio. It's your first impression. And even a second or a third impression. So that has to be your strongest impression that you make. That's why it's so important to really put your time and effort into that because as creatives, as freelancers, your social media is your marketing.
Okay, so I'm having a little bit of feedback here that
Oh no.
my
Okay.
mic is really, really quiet still. I don't know why. So give me a minute, just one. Um, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, that is very weird. And scream otherwise. I completely agree with you about the importance of social media. And the other thing that I'm really facing a lot with all the guests in the show is that many people are actually receiving work just from their social media. So, have you ever had an experience like that?
Most actually, I would say that's very common. Now when I have either client emails or a sudden direct message that comes in, obviously the direct messages come straight from social media. But for a lot of emails, they'll be like, "I saw your work on Instagram primarily," and that can lead to a really great new contact or a client. So that's definitely something that happens more often than I think any other source these days.
Okay, and what do you think about this? Do you think that it's very important nowadays for a person to have their own website when they have their social media?
So I think it kind of goes both ways. I think your website is really where you can curate very carefully kind of the content that's on there, kind of similar to how like a print book, if you will, of your photography. It's kind of what your website has become. Whereas I think your social media is really just showing that you're constantly out there, you're working, you're putting new things out there, you're networking. So I think they have their own purposes a little bit separately. I feel like only your best work should be on your website, and that's really kind of your living portfolio, and your social media is still something you focus on and you try to curate to the best of your abilities, but that it can be a little slightly less polished depending on kind of your genre, because that's a big part of it too. Different photographers, different genres, you can get away with different things as far as you present. But I think that this day and age, you really need both because you need to have that polished, curated thing to present to a potential client.
That sounds very interesting to me. And when we are talking about this, I would like to ask you a question asked by Tim Copsey. He's actually one of the moderators in our Facebook group, the Fashion Photography
Wonderful.
Podcast. And his question is very interesting, and it's also very interesting for me. Many people suggest it's important to add more images to your Instagram feed system, ideally daily. My question is how to balance that against the advice to make the content you add to your feed be your best work and perhaps teamed with exciting work in your feed. In other words, is it important to keep the content consistently being added to, even if your work is not your ultimate best?
So I'm going to kind of approach this in a few different ways because I think it depends, and I hate giving that answer that it depends, but we'll kind of start here. So I think that when it comes to your social media, consistency is really key. And consistency can be in the frequency in which you post. That can definitely be part of the consistency, because your followers might expect to say, like, hey, every 2 days I expect something new from you. That could be part of it, but also kind of consistency in what you present. So what's become very popular now is kind of having those like 3 images per Instagram. Like that's really the thing. I definitely do that myself. A lot of other accounts kind of do that, and that can be a good way to kind of have your cake and eat it too, in that maybe you do 3 series of behind the scenes and they're not very polished, but they're kind of showing what you're doing. That could be a great way to approach it. And then your next set can be, 3 very polished, images from your portfolio that you want to show. I think that there's a way to approach both, but what happens more often than not is I hear people who aren't posting a lot, and they'll say, "Oh, well, the work's not good. It's not really the best work." And I think that you need to kind of find that middle ground of what's acceptable for you to post so that you don't go silent. Because I've had a few, colleagues that they don't post for like a few weeks, and they have other clients that are like, "Hey, what happened? Are you not doing anything anymore? Are you out of the industry?" Like suddenly like, you just kind of died. So I think that really you do have to find ways of creating content that you can post, even if it's just using flashback Fridays or throwback Thursdays, excuses to kind of bring back up your work, but you need to keep constant. It's so important. It doesn't have to be daily, maybe just every other day, maybe it's a couple times a week, but whatever is consistent for you on your frequency is really, I think, the most important thing about that.
Before before I take the mic on this, I want to make a short live in our Facebook group where, by the way, guys, you can find all the recent news. So if you're guys watching this right now, I'm not quite sure if my video has started yet. Okay, maybe I should do more live videos. Okay, so okay, I don't think it's gonna work.
Oh
So
no.
let's leave this for now. Okay. So what I would like to say about this is that I agree about the part that you can post flashbacks, and I think that's amazing and it's a great idea. And everybody knows that for me it's kind of really hard to keep up with all these social medias, but to be honest with you, I definitely realize how important this is, because when you do a photo shoot, when you have to edit everything, when you have to do the podcast, when you have to do
Mhm.
videos, trust me, 24 hours a day are definitely not enough. But the thing
No.
is, you're completely right. The clients are asking what's going on, and you have to do it. And the
You do.
idea about the behind the scenes is absolutely great. I totally agree to that. I find it a little bit harder when I have to, because I'm also a big fan of this 3 by 3.
Hmm.
Because for me it looks better when you have 3 sort of the same images on a row. I prefer that. I definitely do. So what I think is that it's a little bit harder to post those 3 images and within them to fit the images from the behind the scenes. But I think it's doable.
Hmm.
Because our profession is not that easy. So we have to agree that sometimes we have to think a lot about all these little details.
Hmm. Very true.
What's your opinion about the awesome images that we have today? Also, social media accounts that we have today.
I think there's a really wonderful variety, so I'm very excited to kind of dig in and give some feedback, based on looking at photography professionally and kind of steps they can take to really consistently use their social media as their kind of launch pad, as their as the way that they present themselves and then they market themselves. So we have a really great mix of artists, so I'm excited to talk about them.
Perfect. Okay, I can see that Tim is also here and he says, thanks for the answer. You're
You're very
very
welcome.
welcome. And if you have any other questions, not just Dane, but everyone else in the
Mhm.
audience. So you're more than welcome to ask, even
Yes.
during our conversation about the images that we are going to discuss. So I suggest you that we can actually start with the conversation.
Okay, let's do this. Let's
Perfect.
dig in.
Okay. Let's see how this is going to look.
Okay.
Okay. This is our first attendee.
Okay. Let's see.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. I want to make sure I'm on the right screen. Perfect.
Can you see it well?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay. So let's see the count overall, is my
Mhm.
suggestion. I can actually see that he's having some stories here
Which is
that,
good.
yeah, definitely.
Definitely take advantage of stories, especially now that when it comes to Instagram stories, the more you post and the more people view them, you will get pushed kind of the front of their viewing, which is very important. So, being active on that is a huge way to kind of get people to come back to your page and to view your work. So, good on you, Rashid, for using Instagram stories. Definitely a tip to everyone: find an excuse to use those. You want to have that little pink orange ring as much as possible.
And actually, you can reach more people by putting some hashtags
Mm-hmm.
or locations on your social media. I'm sorry, on your story, guys. So use that definitely because it's working a lot. And I don't know about you, Kendra, but what do you prefer now? Do you prefer stories or do you prefer to post on your feed? I know they're both very different things.
They are very different. I'll say I tend to use my feed really for the kind of final product and kind of for posting editorials or new shoots that I've done. And the stories will sometimes mimic that. It can be like hey, we have a new post, check it out. But I really try to keep stories more for that behind the scenes piece of
Mhm.
it, or other things that are going on, that you might be engaged in. So I think that Instagram stories kind of takes over in the way Snapchat did, in that it can be those like behind the scenes peaks that aren't the most like fleshed out perfected things ever, but they give your followers a sense of your personality and who you are, and that there's a human behind all of your images. So I think that it really is up to you how you handle that. But I think that Instagram Stories is such a great way to engage with your audience, and it's really something that every photographer should really try to take advantage of.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, they give something personal, and I really appreciate that because thanks to the podcast, many people actually, I realized that with the start of the podcast, we wanted so bad to just give information to the people and to
Mhm.
help them learn that at certain point, the podcast was all about the facts. And people started to ask about me, about my photo shoots. And I was so frustrated. I was like, how am I supposed to present this information now when we already have this pattern?
Mhm.
And actually, Insta stories are great for that.
They
And I
are.
truly love them. And to be honest with you, I know there's something very different from your actual feed, but I definitely prefer stories. You don't have
That's
to
true.
curate so
No,
much. They're
just 24
disappearing.
hours and they're gone. Yeah, I mean, you can use them in highlights if you want to, and that's also a great way to kind of polish up the feed a little bit with those things you want your followers to kind of keep seeing if they miss that one day. But yeah, it's just another really great opportunity that while some of us might be like, oh no, I have to find time to figure this out, it's worth it. It's worth the investment.
Definitely. Plus, I saw some people from today are actually using those highlights. So good for them.
Good. Very good.
I suggest you to go back to our first attendee
Okay,
um,
we'll do.
feed
Let me see. Oh, whoops.
because
Let me
I'm
see.
sure they're
There.
very excited. So here
Okay,
we
there
go.
we go. Perfect. Okay.
So who should start, me or you? What do you prefer?
I'll kind of jump in here and then start actually. Um,
Okay.
so I'll kind of start this first, just talking about like the overall feed of the for Rashid's page here, and I really love how consistent it is. So this, Rashid has a very kind of obvious style. It's kind of like unapologetically New York, even though he doesn't say where he is. I'm going to
Yeah.
assume it's New York. So And I think that's great that I can kind of get a sense for where someone is from and kind of their style from the page. That's really part of what you're after when you're trying to really kind of brand yourself. And I do appreciate that it's consistent. There aren't a mix of, like vertical shots and kind of like your wide shots with the white frames everywhere. It's really a nice grid. So I think that is really that's really great for this.
What do
And
you, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
What do you think about uploading photos like on bulk photos?
I think they're definitely a great option. It's interesting because you kind of hear so many things about how the mythical Instagram algorithm works, and you never really quite know who's right and who's wrong. But they kind of say that engagement on some of the kind of carousel shots, that those are the ones where you have multiple at a
Mm-hmm.
time, aren't the best for engagement. But I do think that they are quite fun to have. And in for Rashid's page here, he doesn't have like the three in a row. So I think kind of the way that they put it together works in this particular case. If this was someone who wanted to kind of stretch out their content, then the carousels are kind of against that because there's three images you could have put into your feed and gone down. But overall, I think these are solid fashion images. They're very natural. I think I see all natural lighting. I don't think I saw anything really studio based. So it kind of gives you that sense of street style, and wonder, and it's very natural. And that is great to kind of have that style already developed. Because that's something that a lot of photographers are always trying to fix and always trying to seek for. So I really think that shows consistently throughout. It's a very consistent page.
Definitely. I'm sorry about that interruption.
No problem.
Well, I loved your comment about the lack of studio photos. I
Hmm.
don't, such as you, I don't think it's a problem or something. I also love this style. And what I truly love, and I think it's giving this consistency, is actually the color,
Hmm.
because it's very different. And I can definitely see that this was made by just one person. I also think that they're very suitable standing next to each other just as a
Hmm.
photos. And the other thing that I'm really amazed by is that the person actually have a lot of videos here,
They do.
which is, oh, I'm sorry, you can probably hear the sound. Are you able to?
I didn't hear it yet, but
Oh, okay, okay. If you cannot hear it, nobody can. Okay. So there are videos. Unfortunately, I because the the web version of Instagram is not allowing me to just lower the volume
right.
on Instagram. Unfortunately, I cannot play the video right now because this means I have to lower my volume, which means
Hmm.
I won't be able to hear my guest to my co-host. So unfortunately, I won't be able to play the videos while I'm talking. But the other thing that I wanted to say is that I think it's perfect to post videos on Instagram because, as far as I know, they're really pushing forward video.
I think that honestly, if they're following at all in the footsteps of Facebook,
Mhm.
video is everything. Like there really isn't many. You're not going to see a whole lot of stills, on Facebook anymore.
Yeah,
So Instagram typically tends to, for better or for worse, follow in the steps of whatever Facebook does with Instagram. So I think it's definitely something that we're going to see. Hopefully a little bit more emphasis on videos being the way to go. And I think it's a really great way to show case more of what you can do. I think a lot of photographers now are really kind of making that jump to doing video as well as photography. So I think that's a great way to really showcase their skills. And again, I do really enjoy how consistent the feed is here. And
definitely.
I may be mistaken, but I do think there's a chunk of this that is film. At least some of them might be Polaroids. But I do
Mhm.
just love the overall consistency, even though it's very colorful and there's a lot of variety there. The color grading, for the most part, is quite consistent, which I do
It is.
appreciate.
Yeah, definitely. It looks very, very well curated.
Hmm.
Well, let's pick a photo or let's pick a video in this case. I think it's going to be interesting to pick a
Hmm.
video. and to just take a little look at it because it's a minute, a
Yeah,
couple
we'll
minutes.
take a look
Yeah.
there. I actually recognize that model, Bella Dell. So
Okay, so perfect pick. Mm, and then we can actually give some feedback on this particular one.
sounds good.
Okay. I think it's very tender. It's definitely something that I would stop while I'm scrolling just to take a look at.
I agree. I think a lot of fashion photography and fashion films
Mhm.
is all about selling the mood, and this is all mood. It's a lot of that kind of atmosphere and the aesthetic, and it is like I think tender is a great way to put it. As far as you really buy into chemistry between the models in this
Definitely.
case. And I think especially when you're working with models, especially you want to really kind of present them in a great way. And I think there was a lot of really great posing that was going on here, really emotive, which is a great way to go. And what's good is that it wasn't inconsistent at all with the rest of their photography. So the videography from Rashid does match up with the stills as well, which isn't always the case. But in this case, I do think it was very I hate to overuse the word consistent, but you're probably going to hear it a lot. It was consistent.
If it is, yeah, which is a good thing in this
It
case.
is. It is.
I'm not quite sure if people can actually hear us while we are talking during the video.
Okay, got
So
it.
you can guys give us some feedback. This is going to be great. And if we have the person that we're, I'm sorry, the person that we're discussing their work in our live, it's going to be great if you actually give us a some sort of sign.
Yeah, that would be
Okay.
great because I obviously we're somewhat blind in that I don't really have all of the kind of behind the scenes information of these images. So I always want to make sure that, especially when you're critiquing, that you're being as accurate as you can be. And obviously, I'm kind of going into it's almost like a cold call to like a client. Like I'm just kind of seeing what's out there and hoping that I'm grasping the original intentions and what they were going after. So yes, if you're here, please make sure we're kind of guiding in the right direction.
Yeah, just like give us some sign. I think during the whole video, I just sensed this because it was shot with a natural light. It was
Mhm,
like this person is completely comfortable with what they're shooting, and they have this comfort to talk to their models and actually direct the shoot instead of thinking about the light and thinking whether it's looking good or bad and what to
mhm,
do right now, which I think is a great idea. One of the latest podcasts was exactly about this, that if you have a problem on set, you should try to figure it out one by one.
mhm. I mean, as photographers and videographers, we're problem solvers. That's really kind of what it is. You're professional, artistic problem solvers. So that is very good advice.
Absolutely. Not about the advice, but we are definitely solvers. Okay, I think we gave pretty good feedback to this one profile, and I think we're good to go to the second one because actually we have a lot of people
Okay, so we'll
that
get into
are
it.
attending today. Yeah, so let's go to the second profile.
Okay,
Just give me 1 second. Okay, and we're good to go. Present to.
okay. Let's see. There we
Everyone,
go.
suppose. Okay. So the second profile is Isabel. And by the way,
Okay.
oh my God, I'm pretty sure that Isabel was part of my latest workshops. I'm absolutely sure, in fact. And I'm
I
so
believe
happy to
I've
see you
seen,
here.
do believe that I saw an
Yeah.
image or two. And yes, there we are.
Yeah, these
Wonderful.
are from the workshop. Awesome. I'm so happy you guys are so brave this time. Perfect. Okay. Perfect. So let's see the profile overall. I think you're
So,
traveling.
mhm.
Hey. I can also see some images of herself. I don't know whether these are um, self portraits.
Hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. Okay, or not. Beautiful flowers. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. So there are some lovely images, but here I think unfortunately we won't be seeing a lot consistency
Hmm.
because
That
they're very different from each other.
they are.
Yeah. And if Isabel is here, I would like to know if this is, oh, let's see the information. Personal blog of a photographer. It's a personal blog. So this is actually giving us another direction.
That does help because it's the way that I would kind of expect to see the portfolio of a of a personal blog is very different from how I would see it from someone that's just kind of putting out their finished photography projects on there. So that at least kind of gives a little bit of leeway when it comes to the content, because there is a lot of different genres, of different kind of types of photography here. And I'm trying to see if they are kind of, if Isabella is following that three. I think she is for the most part. It just might have been like,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, I think she just might be like on,
Usually.
right. Of course, the only drawback to having that three is that, if you're on that off day or that second day,
Mhm.
everything kind of tiles strangely. Like it's only good when you have the 3 by 3 lined up. Um, but overall, I think another thing that I kind of notice, and this is a personal preference, so it's not necessarily right or wrong.
Mhm.
I just tend to prefer when the whole frame is just filled with photographs, not so much like the white frames. And again, that's just me. Maybe it's others. But I think I would have loved to see
Oh,
the
sorry.
pictures just a little bit more blown up, and using, either the landscape or using, the full kind of 4 by 5 ratio for the portraits, is like my only real visual critique going through onto that.
I actually switched the screens because I wanted to add here
Hmm.
from everything that I have read about Instagram and social media. The thing is, it doesn't sound like it's just your own personal preference.
Hmm.
What I know from all of my studies about Instagram is actually that uh, if you fill the whole image, for example, let me just show it to you like that. If you fill the whole, you won't be able to see it.
We could try
Yeah,
squint.
I really tried. I tried so bad to show you, unfortunately, my personal messages for some reason. Okay, so if you really try to fill the
Mhm.
whole screen,
Right.
Instagram is going to push you further and show it to more people.
I mean, it's true. I mean, you have to kind of remember. I think your phone might be larger than mine, but I mean, it's a small screen. Like, there's really not a lot of real estate. So I think that's partly why it's so important to fill it up because you're taking something that you'd want to have in like a full 8.5 by 11, 11 by 17, kind of magazine sized imagery for the most part, and you're cramming it onto a little 4.5 5.5 inch screen. So I do think that that's probably going to be a sticking point for me as we go through more of the portfolios. I'm going to say, like, just zoom in a little bit more so that way you can really show off all the details for your photography, and really use up that real estate, because the white space, I feel, just tends to waste it when it could go to more of your beautiful photography.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And let's go back to her profile. Before that,
Hmm.
we have a little question. A little, let me just see what you're guys seeing. Okay. A little off topic, but we'll be able to watch later on the live video in your channel, Virginia. Sorry for the interruption. Guys, nothing is interruption. I want you to know that. You can ask all types of questions about social media and about Kendra and me. That's totally fine. We would like this to be a conversation, as we said. Yes, you will be able to find it in in my channel afterwards. I suggest you to stay if you're thinking of leaving until, because you're able to ask all of your questions, especially when we reach your account.
Mhm.
And I think it's a very important thing that we can actually learn a lot even when we are listening about other people, because probably not just Isabella is deciding to upload horizontal images to Instagram.
Mhm. True.
Probably you do too. So
Right.
now you know what is our advice to you. So yes, you'll be able to find it in my YouTube. For, I hope so. If everything on the technical side is
Works
okay.
out.
Yeah. Okay. So let me share the screen again.
Okay.
Okay. And we are going to Isabella's profile. I think actually she started using this 3 by 3
Hmm.
lately, because I can see here that definitely is the first day of something new.
I think so.
Yeah, but here we have three, three,
Hmm.
plus minus three, three again, three
Hmm.
again. Okay, and somewhere over here, I'm not quite sure, we're losing it, because over here, for example, yeah, we again have a flower, but it's not like here. So I think she tried, but I don't think if she were able to maintain this.
Hmm.
I think she's in a good direction now.
Yeah, I do love that because again, we're looking at this through the lens of it being a personal blog.
Hmm.
That I
Yeah.
do think that there's a nice mixture of self portraits and kind of things that kind of either subjects that she has or things that interest her. And I do think I see a variety of some film photography as well as digital, kind of mixed in a little bit here, which I think is like kind of more recent that I really see that. It for the longest time it used to just be like one or the other, not really kind of a mixture. But I think that there's a wealth of personality that's in here. I do see, we have some black and whites, and then we do have kind of more still life, and then we have almost kind of travel photography. So, in terms of a blog, that's typically what you want. Really like a travel blog, I think is kind of how I'd see this fall into.
Hmm.
Um, I think a lot of it is kind of focused on the travel. So it's as far as things to do, I do think that the presentation should be something that is thoughtful, and in a lot of places it is. I think in some it falls off a little bit, and I think now you're just at the very beginning of her feed. So I think what's very interesting is to see the visuals kind of progress as you scroll up to the more recent work. More recently, you're right, there has been a little bit more curating kind of done,
Hmm.
and a little bit more consistency throughout. And once you're done kind of scrolling here, would love to see her description, because one thing I like to look at is really seeing if the description ties in for the rest of the account, because I think your profile information shouldn't really be something that's like not used like what accounts that are just like the name. Really,
Hmm.
it should have something that goes into it. So for Isabel, like she says it's a personal blog of herself. I do like she kind of has almost a mission statement, the
Hmm.
searching for unconventional beauty in life, and that's good because that kind of sets the tone for the rest of. I say portfolio, but again, your Instagram's pretty much your portfolio.
True.
So I think that that does kind of help, but I would say to if you're gonna start going for that 3 by 3, to definitely kind of stick to it. And I do think that making sure that everything lines up and it's using up that full space is going to really improve the overall kind of the viewing experience, for the audience to kind of go through and just have those kind of, filled up like rich pictures that are there.
I also love that she has some sort of statement. And what I
Mm-hmm.
can recommend is when you're uploading 3 by 3, you can all guys try to have different crops, because here and here they're almost the same crops, as you
Mm-hmm.
can see. So on your feed, it's going to look better if you have some sort of a full body image, then you have a close up, then you have like a portrait. I think it's going to work better for you.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, this is just my opinion. Okay, let's pick one photo. What do you think about that?
Oh, let's pick one. We'll see. There's
What about this
a
one?
let's do that. Okay.
And by the way, oh yeah, it's a self-portrait.
It is a self portrait. I'm
Yeah.
actually glad to kind of dig in because I do like to take a look at hashtags, especially when you're talking about social media. So I do appreciate that there's a lot of hashtags. There's nothing wrong with that. And
Because
it's kept within the original post, which is important.
mhm,
There was a time when everyone was being kind of sneaky and like putting their hashtags into comments because it looked cleaner on the feed, and then it seemed like Instagram started to punish those posts
yeah,
with the the shadow ban. I don't, which we're not really sure if that still exists or not. So I think that part's important. And there is a good mix, and I think that it kind of helps to see. Okay, so this was shot with Fuji, with a Fuji film. I'm assuming film camera. I'd have to kind of check on there. But as far as the image itself, I do think that there's a lot of visual interest. You're using um, it has kind of following your rule of thirds, if you will, in that it kind of
mhm,
like I'm imagining our little nine quadrants and kind of seeing it, where the hand and the flower is kind of your visual interest. And there are other photos from this set throughout on her feed, but I do think that this one kind of gives your eye something to follow as you're going through.
yeah, definitely. There are more photos from this set.
Hmm.
Well, I also like the image a lot. I have just a little trick for you. Try to match this color with this one,
Hmm.
and make sure what's your main subject. Because right now, this part of your body is way too bright for me, and my eyes a little bit confused whether I should look at your
Hmm.
hand or at your back. So just for this image, this is my advice. But overall, I love the series because
I would like to
mhm,
say to one thing on there too, and sorry
yeah,
to interrupt
no,
on there.
no, go ahead.
Um, when you're doing poses that are kind of like that, you have to really be careful to keep everything on the same plane, so you don't really have any foreshortening when it
Hmm.
comes to that. Because I do feel like the hand looks a little smaller than it could have. Just
Yeah,
making sure you're on the same kind of level.
yeah,
So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind, especially when you are trying to kind of draw your viewer into what they should be focusing on. I think if it was closer to camera and therefore
hmm,
larger, that would make it more obvious as far as where you want the eye to travel.
I completely agree with you. And again, we should give her the credit because it's a self portrait.
Yes, no, absolutely. So self portrait, of course.
So
I
good
promise.
job overall.
Any feedback I give is with good intentions. That's one thing I always try to to focus on.
Of course. I think we're both at the same situation. Okay. So, um, I think you're completely right that some time ago, people tried to post their hashtags actually
Mhm.
in the comments. Right now, I definitely don't recommend you this, guys, because
Don't do
this
that.
may.
Don't do
Can you repeat
it. Don't do it. Just
it?
don't. Stop.
Yeah, stop it because it's not helping you. And I know it
No.
might look tighter, but it's not helping you. And
Yeah.
overall, the main point behind this whole social media thing is to make sure that it's actually helping us. So if you have any, if you're not completely sure that what you do is the right thing, there are many ways to ask people and make sure that you can do it the best possible way, the way that it's actually going to help you in your
Hmm.
future.
Hmm. Yeah. Just no more hashtags and comments. Let's
Yeah.
just. I'll promise not to do that anymore.
And you have to make sure that they're related to your image.
Yes, that too.
Okay, perfect. Let's go to the next profile, and that's
Okay,
Vladimir. And he's
Vladimir.
also, yeah, he was also part of the same workshop that Isabel
Oh,
was.
great. Okay, I'm seeing
So,
seeing some film in
yeah.
here as well. I'm noticing a trend. I'm noticing a lot of film.
And he's also here live. So, if he has any questions, that would be great.
Yes, please. All
And he
questions are
also
great.
have some photos of himself,
Hmm.
which is very interesting for me how people are able to actually um, mix their work with their own portraits. It's something that I can definitely learn on.
I do think there's kind of a growing trend with kind of photographer personalities, if you will, that a lot of people kind of start as self-portrait artists, and that's kind of like them kind of coming out of their comfort zone and kind of figuring out the technical aspects of the camera before they kind of move on to working with models and more professionals. So I think we see this a bit more, and I think that's a great way for someone to start, to become kind of comfortable with yourself first before you kind of go ahead and subject other people to the camera. So I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I know plenty of artists that still do both. They'll still have their professional work and they'll still have very thoughtful self portraits. And I think, again, that part's good so long as that's in line with your branding, and you want to make sure that yourself, and your image is part of that branding. So again, it's again putting a face to yourself and your brand. So yeah, I think that's something that's interesting just to see that a lot more.
It's very interesting, and at the same time, it's a big challenge, especially if you're not very comfortable as a photographer
Yes.
in front of the camera. And I also think it's a great way to learn how to actually tell your models what to do and make sure how they're going to feel more comfortable
Mm-hmm.
in front of the camera, because they're it is their job, but at the same time we're all human, so they might not feel comfortable at the very beginning.
Yeah.
So if you have the experience and you know how to actually give them the information what you want them to do, this is going to help both you and them, because the
Mm-hmm.
process is going to be so much easier.
Very true.
So we can go back to the Instagram account. Okay, so perfect. And you have some self portraits.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And as far as I can see, your Instagram account actually is not that old. Let me just check. Uh, April 2014. Okay, 4 years old. Okay, my mistake. But I don't think you've been that active.
Let's see. Okay.
Okay. But we can definitely see the difference. You see, his hair is
Well,
different.
it's. I think that's true. I do think that that's also something worth noting is when you do kind of like scroll through someone's feed and kind of go back to their original posts, you always want to see improvement and you want to see growth. That's
Mhm.
really kind of what you're looking for. And I do think that there is definitely technical improvements throughout here. Though I will say my favorite images on Vladimir's feed is definitely some of the more kind of some of the portraiture that he has is really that I quite enjoy. I think it was some of the monochrome images that I think you're either coming up to. Yeah, like the two of these here I love, of the kind of more elder gentleman there, and I think that one has really great mood as well with the cigarette and the
Mhm.
lighting. It's very dramatic. I think that is very stylistic, and I think these days, we're so bombarded with imagery, in every wake of life, especially on social media, that I do think having just really kind of striking images like this, where you're really just drawn to the subject, is really a great way to go. And I would love to see more of that throughout the feed. And I'm trying to kind of keep an eye too on let's see, on some of the hashtags. I will say I'm noticing hashtags like photography and black and white. So I'm going
Mhm.
to take this moment to kind of give a little tip. Try very hard to avoid hashtags that are that popular, because your work will never really get seen if there's millions of images that are there. If anyone searches that hashtag, they just go like quick refresh and, oh, we have 500 new posts. So I
Yes.
really recommend, when you're kind of looking at hashtags, to take that time and see if it's under 500,000, you're pretty good. Like, I honestly try to stay under 100,000 if I can. But I would probably say try to not go for the super, super popular, like photography, black and white, that probably have, I don't know, 50 million hashtags.
Okay, guys, I'm not quite sure if you can see the sharing screen right now, which is okay. So
Okay, we're back.
I think it's so good now. So we were talking about, I'm very sorry about that.
That's
We
okay.
were talking about this image and
Mm-hmm.
also that one.
Mm-hmm.
To be completely honest with you, I love this one. I think it's very moving. I love the background. I love his expression, and it looks so natural to me, just like he's been doing whatever he's doing. And Vladi was just there. It's amazing to me. I love it. And I also love some of the architecture, but
Hmm.
it's probably because I've been studying for ages graphics, so maybe it's just me being too in love with the graphics. But your black and white work is actually very, very moving.
No, I agree that that one image you mentioned is it's almost kind of surreal. It's very cinematic. The one where he's holding, I
He's
think it was the flag.
Yeah, and to be honest, this photo is one of the photos that I definitely prefer to see horizontal.
Hmm.
I'm sorry to say that. I know you didn't want to hear me say that, but just as an image,
Hmm.
apart from the whole social media thing, just as an image, I love it as
Hmm.
a horizontal one. I don't think it was going to look as cinematic as it is right now if it was vertical.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, no, it definitely has to stay wide, but you can still have it wide and still fill up your feed with the cropping appropriately. At least I know in iOS, I'm assuming same thing with Droid. But yeah, horizontal on this, I do think it has a lot of impact because it's, it's a mixture of kind of a powerful portrait with a landscape, and you want to have that kind of epic, sweeping kind of feel to it, which this definitely does. And I do think it is a very very strong shot, and I am glad to see that it was part of an exhibition,
Yeah.
as the caption says. And I do you really want to have those little kind of storytelling moments within your feed, and kind of explaining a little bit more behind it. I think there's a lot of mystery in that photo, so I'd love to know more about it. But I'm glad to know it is on display somewhere.
Actually, this image, this particular one, I think it's one of those images that even if it's horizontal, it's just so grabbing image. It's just amazing. So I think even if I see it in my feed horizontal, I'm just gonna stop and look at it. So I don't think you're losing a lot here. But for the rest of the images, yes, you can you can make sure. And those images like looking like this one and this one, they remind me actually of Isabel's feed when you
Hmm.
have a little bit of a blog side of the whole story, because you have a lot of personal images here. That's you
Hmm.
again, you again. And to me, it looks a little bit like a personal profile, not as much as official one.
Yeah, I do agree with that, and I do think that that's. I was actually kind of skimming the description at the top again for Vladimir's profile here, and they focus on being a photographer. Talking about like doing photo shoots. So I think that that really should focus more on the photography, and maybe using kind of like Instagram stories for some of those pieces that are a little bit more of kind of turning that lens back on you and having more of kind of the self-portrait work, because I do think that you need to there needs to be that balance
Yeah.
between the work, and it should feel more like a full photography page, and not as much as a kind of personal blog. I tend to recommend separating them, unless the self portraits are really meant to kind of showcase your skills in a particular area of photography. And while some of them definitely do that, like you can kind of argue they're again that kind of street style photography, there's others that I think are a little too casual. That should be something that's more kind of left to the Instagram stories, or Snapchat, or a personal account, not necessarily the professional photography account.
As I'm not quite sure if like can actually tell us in the YouTube chat whether this is a self-portrait. I'm pretty sure it is, but at the same time, I can see that on some of the photos you actually have some captions,
Mm-hmm.
though they're not too long or something. Okay, again, exhibition that's giving me some great feedback on you and what you do. Nice walk with a friend. Okay, so the captions are not really long, but
Hmm.
you don't have them everywhere. So
Hmm.
a little bit of consistency over here, even if you post an image like that. So happy if my picture is taken on film. uh, to me that's a little bit personal, and as part of your audience, I'm also happy for you. I think that's very it helping me to it's helping me to relate to you, which I think is good. But for example, on this photo you have no caption and I'm a little bit lost. I'm not quite sure why are you posting this,
Hmm.
just as an audience.
No, I do agree. I think that, like I said, there needs to be a balance between kind of the more casual images and the professional ones. And I think that it more and more you'll kind of see a lot of photographers really focus more on kind of the professional side of their work.
Hmm.
And then again they might have like that quick row of some of the kind of behind the scenes, which I think is good. But I think that it's a little too sporadic in this case. So I would have liked to see a little bit more of the focus on the kind of photographs and the products themselves, because the photography itself is beautiful, and I think I would love to see a bigger focus on that.
Yeah, I also love the photography. I think you have some very beautiful pieces, and if you kind of try to structure this, it's going to be perfect for you and the audience, and I think it's going to uh, just help you to move further. There was a question that I wanted to ask you, but before that, let me. Oh my God, there is a real discussion in the live chat. That's awesome.
Okay.
Okay, that wasn't expected. Also, okay, yes, I'm in front of a dilemma, says Vladi.
Okay.
Should I create separate profile for my personal work, or should I combine my personal with it?
I
And
would
the screen
recommend.
doesn't show up. That is true. I'm very sorry about that.
It's okay. I personally, I'm always a fan of personal accounts and professional ones separate. I think that having them separate is really the way to go. I'm also one of those people that tends to recommend splitting up genres too. Like if you shoot weddings, for example, I wouldn't put your weddings with your fashion work, or whatever else you might be doing. I would have it separate because, again, the way I look at Instagram is that Instagram is your portfolio. So you want your portfolio to be specifically catered to whatever client or audience you're going for. So personally, I would like to see a personal one. You can even put it up in your description, hey, follow my personal account here, and then have your photography one really aimed at just the photography.
I definitely agree. The thing is, I have my account and also the fashion photography account, and I'm going crazy because I don't know what I'm posting, where am I posting, what I do right now. So, how I solve the problem for me is that when I post an image on my feed, it's usually an image from my like official account. If I had to separate it, that
Mm-hmm.
would be the one that I would show on my feed. It's my work. And then when I have to, or I never ever have to, when I want to post something personal, I'm going to post it on my story because it's going to
Yeah,
disappear, which
yeah,
is
that's
awesome.
true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So if I want to drink some tea and show it to the people, because I truly love drinking tea, and I want to share this beautiful emotion with all the people out there, I'm just going to post it to my story. If I'm traveling somewhere, because I love shooting when I'm traveling, just to have this as a memory. Don't think it's like some amazing um, photography of landscapes or
Hmm.
something. It's not. It's just a memory for me. It's 24 hours memory on my story, not on my feed. So
No, very
that's
true.
the way I solve the problem.
I also would probably recommend, because I think this comes up a lot in terms of, how do I manage it, or even just from a time standpoint. So I highly recommend considering apps like Later. is a great way to kind of pre-schedule your content ahead of time so that you're not kind of rushing and scrambling, being like, oh no, I haven't posted in 2 days. What do I do? You can kind of have that ahead of time, and I at least know. I think, and I'm sure there's other ones out there. I just know Later is one of the ones that was made an official Instagram partner, so that's why I feel safe recommending them. They're not going anywhere. They You can also like manage multiple accounts on there. So if you do have a personal account, you do have a photography account, you do have maybe another side business that you also run. Again, as freelancers, we tend to have a lot of entrepreneurial spirit. You can do that and kind of have it there for you. And they auto post, so that part is kind of taken care of. I do think researching something like Later, or another one that's out there, Hootsuite, or whatever other ones might be of use, is a great way to tackle that time aspect in order to get the content out there that you need.
That's a great idea. Awesome. So let's take a look at the next account. What
Okay.
Vladdy said was that the photo with the cigarette, a friend helped him, which is
Okay.
okay. That is fine if the
That's okay.
idea is yours. Okay, so let's go to the next person. If Vladdy have any other questions, feel free to ask. That's all right. So let me share that screen. Okay. Okay. So here we go.
Okay,
This is
Tyler.
Taylor. Okay.
Okay. I will say, kind of off the bat, that there is no consistency throughout.
Let me just see
Which,
if everyone can
let
see
me
our
see.
screen this time.
Okay, perfect. Yes, that might. Otherwise, it'll speak me kind of like awkwardly staring
Yeah,
as we go through.
as we did the last time.
Yes. Oh no. Whoops.
Okay. I think now it's okay.
Okay,
So
we're
this is the
presenting.
account, guys.
Okay, so we have Tyler's account here. Okay, and there's a mixture. Like I'm seeing some kind of infant photography, and then there's some portraits. I see some fashion. I do see kind of more of the kind of creative, kind of experimental shoots. And I think that is a little jarring, personally, to kind of have that much. I think, for some photographers, like we kind of feel like we want to show all the things that we can do. But I think more and more, especially as I talk to a lot more clients and a lot of other people in the industry, they really want to see something that, is kind of similar throughout. Not just necessarily stylistically, but definitely genre-wise, because the kind of the photography, like the newborn photography, I would really keep very separate from like fashion. It's precious, and they're really great images, but this is the first time I think I've seen them mixed with fashion images as well. I feel like they need to kind of be separate. Family photography should really be in one area, and then kind of having fashion in other ones. The small Mad Max is precious, though, I have to say. But that's one thing that I kind of notice right away going through the feed, is that it's too varied. I do like that, at least in this case, it looks like they're all kind of in that same vein of family photography. Which is good. But then I think the more recent stuff is very mixed. Like we have kind of like a glamour shot with tattoos, and then we have kind of the fashion shoots. So I would really like to see it, really having a little bit more of the same genre on the page, and not really mixing as much. Because they're really they're great images, but I would like to enjoy them separately. It's kind of like, to me, is almost like watching kind of like a comedy, and then like suddenly kind of having like a horror film suddenly show up in between the video clips. It's just jarring. So I think that's one of the first things that I notice about this. I will say, though, Tyler, I love your profile picture for sure. I think that has a lot of personality, and that's really fun. And I think that is in line with the kind of tagline of another utterly unique robot, which is interesting. But I do like the personality piece of that. I just want to see a little bit more of the same content throughout the feed.
So what I see in his about section is family and portrait photographer. Art is falling in love completely and deeply for a fraction of a second. DM or click. Okay, that's fine. I truly love your profile photo too, but unfortunately, throughout the about section, I think the only personal thing about this account is your profile photo because it's very different from what I've seen so far and it's drawing me to your account. But at the same time, I don't really relate to your about section because it's a quote from somebody else. And I'm not sure if it's your quote or it's some somebody else's. So I would definitely look into that and try to um, just present the people a little bit about myself. I know how hard this is because I've tried this and I have my about section on my website. I have my about section in my YouTube channel, in my Instagram channel, and it's so hard to mix it and just be absolutely clear with all the people out there. Who are you? Just two sentences. I know how hard it is, but right now, um, it's kind of hard for me. Even if I was just able to see this part, I would have I would have been more drawn into your work. Um, what we said about the feed, I completely agree with. If you are interested in the fashion field, that's awesome. You can just make a separate account for it. Because imagine how this feed is going to look if we have this, and this photo next to each
Hmm.
other. And then we have in a completely different profile these four.
Hmm.
It's going to look so much better and really curated and it's going to be easier for me as a client. If I have a kid, I would like to see a photo of my kid like this. But if I was recently a mother, I would probably not relate to this one. So if you have two different accounts for your separate art, I think it's going to be better for your business. Let me put it like that.
No, I definitely agree. I think that again, it really should be consistent in the genre, and I agree that if you just removed them and just separated them into two separate things, you have a totally different viewing experience of that feed when you kind of have the all the fashion and portraits, on one, and you have all of the kind of newborn and family photography in another. Because I definitely would think that clients might be a little confused when they're looking at the feed and they're kind of seeing like, oh, these are really I really love that newborn picture. Like there's so much emotion. It's so great. And then they kind of see one of the fashion ones. And like you mentioned, Virginia, like you can't really relate the same way because it's a totally different client than, a new, a new mother, new father.
Mhm.
So I definitely would agree that they should be separate. I think that is worth the time to do that, especially if maybe in this case, I don't know if Tyler is maybe just starting to kind of go into fashion, and maybe they're just trying to test the waters, see how that is. Then I think it makes even more sense to keep it separate. So that way you can kind of experiment freely with the
Mhm.
work there and then keep, your kind of bread and butter, family and portrait photography on this one account.
I cannot tell you if he is stepping into the photography business right now too. That's exactly what I meant by saying that you need a little bit more info on your about section.
Mm-hmm.
Just let the people know whether you've been published before, why are you doing this, whether you just like it or this is your profession. Just a little bit of info, or otherwise leave it completely unrelated with just this quote. Yeah, I think it's cool. It's just frustrating for me. The other thing that many photographers are expecting from their client is when a client take a look at your Instagram feed, you kind of expect them to click on your website. But the thing is, not many people do, simply because we're lazy nowadays.
It's so lazy. You're not wrong. I think too, and I noticed there. I'm noticing quite a few accounts that don't list their location, and that really
Mhm.
confuses me. Like, please list your location. People should know where you are, unless you're traveling everywhere. But I think that's a huge piece that's missing. So if you learn nothing else, put your location. Where are you? How can people get to you?
Or at least
Is another
put
things.
or at least put locations on your photos, because you
Right.
might be really traveling, and then you can be shooting on different places. So if so, let the people know. Though here we can talk about something very interesting. When a person is actually listing their location when they're not there. Have you ever experienced
Mm.
something like this?
I've seen that. So I personally try to get around it myself in my own account because I talk about like I'm in like LA, New York, as
Mm-hmm.
well as Miami. Miami is kind of my home base. So I usually put like the little like location marker, like here's where I am. Here's where I sometimes go in the
Yeah.
other locations. I think is how you can stay honest about where your markets are. But I have seen quite a few people that kind of list um, that they're saying they're in one area, but they're really not. And if you plan to travel to that location a lot, I think it's fine. If you're not, though, I'm somewhat confused as to kind of the value of, kind of saying that you're in London if you're not in London, or you're in a certain, you're in Milan, but you're not really in Milan. I think that it's important to be accurate in where you are because it tends to just kind of hurt you because you can have those clients that'll reach out to you and say, oh, I'd love to come, shoot at your home or your studio, wherever your place of business is. And then they're like, oh, but you're 2.5 hours away. Pass. That's too much for me to handle. So I think that you really want to be honest about where you are. Like my city is Palm Beach, which is like an hour of Miami. So I say I'm in Palm Beach. I tend to go to Miami, New York, and LA, but my home base is Palm Beach. So look on Google Maps to figure out kind of the distance if you're going to be shooting
Yeah.
at my studio itself. So that's my take on it. Is I think in this case, honesty is the best policy. You don't want to say you're in one spot if you're not.
And also, what I have noticed, especially when you're traveling a lot and when you're putting one location, because when you can put a location on each and every photo.
Mhm,
If you do that, what I have noticed is that if I'm back to Sofia in Bulgaria, where
mhm.
I live, if I put a tag from a photo that I have shown in London, if I if I list the London location and I'm in Sofia at that time, my reach is getting so low. You cannot even imagine.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah, yeah, it's really bad. Though the photo was done in in London, and I'm tagging actually the city that I've been, now nobody can reach me. It's like punishment all over from from Instagram.
I think there might be some piece, kind of to that, but I do think that now I think there's a bit of an allure to kind of being a traveling photographer. That I think for some people they kind of want to show like, look where I was, when I took
Hmm.
these photos, and that's part of the motivation for putting their locations. I
Hmm.
don't think there's anything wrong with that, but if you're experiencing kind of a downturn in your engagement, then that's not really helping you very much when it comes to that. So I personally do list where the photos were taken for the most part. So if I'm in LA, I'll list LA. If I'm somewhere around Florida, I'll kind of list where it is. But if I was seeing a negative impact, maybe not, maybe not so much when it comes to that
Absolutely.
location.
I completely stopped. I mean, uh, it's not like I'm tagging a studio in London. I'm actually tagging a huge park there where we had the shoot, and I'm like, okay, so if I'm looking for, because especially if I'm looking for locations, and if I have to travel in 2 days, but my shoot is in 3 days, and I don't have the location right now, I will take a look and I will search for similar locations that I know that I'll have an access to. So I'm tagging with the same within the same rules. I'm tagging because somebody might be looking for this location,
Hmm.
and on the photo shoot you can actually see it. Turns out Instagram is not really with me here. So yeah, let's just go back to our review and pick a photo. And I
Okay.
think we should, as this review is part of the fashion photography podcast, I think it's going to be good if we pick a fashion related
Hmm.
photo. And I kind of like that one here.
Hmm.
So let's see what we love about it and how we can improve it.
So I definitely love I love the lighting. I love the pose. I do love the backdrop. I do think that there's kind of a lot of presence in the shot, but I will say the bar in front is a hard thing for me to look past. So I think if it wasn't there, it would be that much better of an image. So that's definitely one. I think it's too distracting. Like it's not really a leading line for me because it covers up some of the elements, and especially in fashion, you don't really want anything in the way of the clothes because the clothes are the hero, of the story. So that's one thing that I would say if we could remove that, I think the image would have would be a more successful picture for fashion.
Yeah, I like the color balance. Um, Talking especially about the clothes with the background.
Hmm.
But I completely agree about the bar in front. And the other thing that I would do is to straighten up a little the whole image.
Hmm.
Because for me, those lines are all falling towards the right.
Hmm.
So definitely fix that. Mm, and yeah, overall, I like your feed. I just think you need to separate it. If you're looking and you're going for a fashion career, that's completely fine. You can switch whenever you want. Just keep it separate for your clients
Hmm.
because clients really need to relate to what they're seeing. Okay. Do you have anything else to say about this feed?
I think we've said. I think I've said everything that I would on this one.
Perfect. Let's take a look whether yes. Oh, people are continue their discussion. I love
Okay.
that. Okay,
Thank you.
let's see what we have. Should I create? Okay, we saw that. I saw that my screen is not showing up. Thank you. Okay, thank you for your feedback. Much appreciated. I'm late, but Rashid. Oh, Rashid, you were
Oh, Rashid, you
first.
were first.
Ah, so sorry about that. Yeah, everything is natural light. I never really use tropes. Oh, good. So you have actually seen the beginning.
Okay,
I've
good.
seen the video a lot as well. That's great. We are very happy for you. And we both think you should continue with the video as well.
Yes, yes. More videography. It is a great direction.
Perfect. Okay. And if you guys want to discuss the rest of the images and the social accounts, you're more than welcome to do it. Let's continue with the next one.
Okay, here we go.
Okay. Oh,
Okay.
Stephanie is one of our regulars in the Facebook group. That's
Oh,
awesome.
yay.
Good to see you here. Okay, co-founder of Bird. I don't know
I
Bird.
I did a little research. I did go to that website because I was
Okay.
curious. I was like, you know what? I'm intrigued. I want to know more. And it is kind of a collection of kind of interviews and features for particularly like interesting women, like women with a story.
Awesome.
And so I really appreciate that. So that kind of let me know a little bit more about Stephanie. So what I don't know is if there's a separate Instagram for Bird.
Bird.
I'm
Hmm.
assuming there
Me
is.
either.
If there is another account, I would have put that in there instead of the website. I would have put the, at whatever the Bird account is, because you
Right
really
now,
want to try to keep all the Instagram things on Instagram.
right now you can actually do both. You
Hmm.
can actually just add a little at here,
Hmm.
and then oh, I'm sorry, and then this is your info is going to lead to your other accounts, which I
Hmm.
think is great because I also would love to know a little bit about Bird more, and it's going to be great if you can actually add this. I
Hmm.
also see that we have a location here, which is great.
Good job, Stephanie.
Yeah, thumbs up. And the other thing is, that we see a very clear image of you. And I love
Mhm.
that you're actually smiling on it because this is drawing my attention. And at the same time, I want to interact more with you, which is great by the point of a client. Okay, let's take a look at the
Mhm.
images. You know what? Maybe it's going to be better if I just scroll down. Okay, isn't that one of the, yeah, it is one of the girls from the American Next Top Model.
Oh, it
I'm
is.
pretty sure she is. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think I do see a lot of kind of inclusion and a lot of body positivity
Mm.
in Stephanie's feed, which I think is great. And I think that that's quite consistent throughout. So I think that that's why the kind of explanation of bird is so important, because that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the feed, and why that's such a kind of repeated theme to have that kind of body positivity and a lot of the different inclusion throughout. So I see, a lot of portraiture, a lot of fashion. I think pretty much exclusively that. There's a couple like nature shots here and there, a
Mm.
little bit of architecture, but for the most part, it has that feeling of a blog on these earlier posts. Particularly, it seems like the more recent ones are a little bit more on that kind of fashion end of the
Yeah.
imagery.
It looks like at the beginning it was just an Instagram account
Mm-hmm.
or here, for example. And now she has this direction where
Mm-hmm.
she would like to go, which I really appreciate. Look at this. I mean, they're, let me just see when they were posted, September 7th.
Okay.
Okay, they were all posted at the same day. I definitely can feel that because they look very alike, and I love
Mm-hmm.
that. It's no problem to post at the same day. If you have enough um, images to share every day, that's awesome.
Yeah, go for it. If you definitely have the amount of content, go for it.
Yeah.
If you can spread it out, though, spread it out. That's usually my advice, because I think it's easy to have like a new shoot or something just came out and you're like, oh, I want to show them all at once. Like you're really excited about it,
Yeah.
but then you've kind of used all of it, so you can't really post day after day
True.
with that content. But I do think that there's I think it shows, it's interesting because I almost want to say that the account shows some versatility, at least in technical skill for sure, because
Mhm.
there's some set design, there's some studio photography. We're seeing some Polaroids for kind of behind the scenes. We are seeing those more kind of environmental portraits. We're seeing kind of the aspirational fashion, and that more kind of the body positivity, kind of acceptance, imagery. There's beauty. There's a lot that's really here, and I think that is great. And the only thing that I would say, because I'm sure you're gonna know I'm gonna say it, is the white frames. I would love this account so much more if we didn't have the white frames, and I'm probably gonna keep saying it again and again. So I'm sorry, Stephanie, but if you could just zoom it in, because I think
Yeah.
that it
Sure.
it makes such a difference. Like now, like this section is pretty much all filled up. Like it's all kind of
Mhm.
in the
Well,
it's using squares, but
well, these are the older images.
yeah,
Yeah, it's squares. That's why.
gotcha.
Because
Okay.
this was the old
Hmm.
algorithm. Hmm.
But I
But
think
yeah, no,
visually that makes a
it's better.
difference.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay. I can definitely recognize that these images, sorry, the newest ones, yeah, they're definitely made by just one person, which means you already have your own style, which I think it's great and very, very good for you. Because especially, I don't know about you, Kendra, but
Hmm.
to me, Instagram is doing something, I believe to everyone, but let's see. Even if I don't particularly follow just one account, and if I like one or two images
Hmm.
just on my feed, mm, okay. So if I'm just scrolling and if I see an image that I like, I'm gonna like this image and I'm
Hmm.
gonna look at the profile overall. But if I don't like most of the images, I'm not going to follow this person. At the
That's
same
true.
time, yeah, people are changing every day, so Instagram is going to show me more and more posts from this person, and if this person has a particular style, you can definitely feel that.
Hmm.
And even after the third image from your feed, and these are not even the people that you follow, you can recognize this photographer right away. So in this case, this is exactly what would have happened if I have seen some of those images on my feed. I would definitely say that this was done by the same person. And I
Hmm.
think that's great. I love your comment, Kendra, on the body positivity. I
Hmm.
think it's great. I'm very confused that the appreciation is not that big.
Yeah, I'm surprised too, and I'm trying to kind of look through on the post frequency if it's
Let's take
like
a
every
look.
day or if it's okay. So
May
that
18th.
May 18th. Okay,
Okay,
so
again,
that's
again.
so
So,
I think then what Stephanie might be doing, and I would kind of advise against it, is I would not post like all the images on one day. I would definitely not do that because I think that that's hurting the engagement. Because now with with Instagram's kind of again, mythical algorithm. And I always say that because a lot of people have ideas of how it works, but, that it tends to punish you if you don't get a lot of likes or a lot of comments right away. And if you're flooding your feed all at once, then that kind of lowers your chances of getting that chance of like one of the images really catching on and going a little bit further. So I would personally, if there's like those 3 images or 6 images from the set, I would try to really just one a day.
mhm.
Maybe, like I said, use later. It's free. You can post, I think, 30 posts a month for free. And then that way you can kind of just schedule it ahead of time, but that way it spreads out the wealth a little bit because, for such a very like aesthetically kind of curated feed, there really should be more engagement and more, I think there should be more activity on it. So I think doing that will help to reach a wider audience and give them that chance to like the images and to hopefully kind of make that appear a little bit more, things on like the explore page so that they can get more visibility.
Plus, I saw that she's actually posting like 5 images the same day, but then she has a gap, like
Hmm.
a week gap. And you can actually post 1 image per day, and this is going to fill a week
Hmm.
almost, which is better for your feed, for you, for your following list. So, yeah, definitely do that.
Yeah, I tend to find, and maybe this isn't the same for everyone, but I do find that if I post daily, like just once a day, I try not to go more than that, and then I don't post for a week, the next time I post, I get no engagement at all. Like it's like I'm punished for it, and apparently that is part of the algorithm that if you aren't really active, that it does kind of take a hit to who's going to see it and how many of your followers will view it. So I definitely highly recommend if you have a set of images, spread them out because I think that that will really help you to reach more people. And that's really, I mean, in the end, it's if you're on Instagram, you want people to see your work. It is marketing. So that's what I would definitely say.
Is there an image that you would like to discuss when we are just scrolling here? I stopped here.
Hmm.
I don't know why, to be honest, because I was drawn by these lines.
Hmm.
Um, I like the image overall, but the only thing that is frustrating for me is that I cannot really see the cloth very well.
I do think that it does fade a little bit into the background. So I think I would have liked a little bit more separation so that way the clothes are kind of seen a little bit more. I do focus more on the model. And I do kind of see from her hashtags here that she's kind of talking about like girl gaze and kind of, appreciating, like a woman through another woman's eyes. So I do think that that's kind of shown. It's kind of delicate in a way. But I do think, as far as a fashion image goes, I can't really see the dress. So that's something that I would have tried to lighten. And I can't tell if it's film or whatnot, but even if you're shooting, film, I think that when it comes onto your computer, if you're using Photoshop, just use the curves adjustment just a little bit to kind of
Yeah.
bring out some of those darker parts in the image so that you can see, the product in a sense.
This is definitely the thing that you can do right now when you already have the image. But for the next time, you can just ask your model to make a step towards you and just have not like to wash out everything on the
Hmm.
background because your location is beautiful, but just have a little bit of differentiation between the model and the background. I
Hmm.
think this would have helped too. So pretty much that's it. Overall, beautiful feed. I
Hmm.
love most of the images, especially the latest one. I think there is a
Hmm.
big difference between now and then. The one big thing is to try to post daily.
Hmm.
One photo is instead five altogether.
Hmm.
And I really love the message. I
I
really
agree.
do. You can just give us a little bit of info in your about section.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of room in there, so you still have more of a character count to
Mhm.
use. So I would definitely love to hear a little bit more about kind of Stephanie's story and the kind of the purpose behind it, and kind of the intentions behind, kind of the woman behind the lens. I think is something that your audience would definitely appreciate. And and in the end, people follow someone because they either admire their work or they admire them, or they want to know them more. So I think that letting your audience know more about you is only to your benefit.
I think I'm going to listen to this conversation again.
Okay. Okay.
Because there are a lot of insights and I love it. I love what you're saying. I think it's very, very valuable. So
Thank
people
you.
can learn from it. Okay, let's take a look at the next account.
Okay,
Okay.
Christine. Okay.
Chris- Christine is also very, very active. And
Hmm.
I love that. And I appreciate that a lot. So, yes, guys, be active. This is only going to help.
I'm seeing a
Okay.
lot of beauty photography, a lot of macros, and I think they're very well executed macros, which is good because macro photography is no easy feat. It's definitely one of the more technically difficult to do and time consuming, especially if you're retouching them. So I do like this. I think there's a lot. It's a lot of beauty. There's a mixture of fashion, but I'm seeing predominantly it's beauty. Some of the more kind of avant-garde, kind of experimental. Some a little bit more natural. It seems I'm seeing a lot of editorial. I would say overall, not a whole lot of commercial, which I think is good. I think especially nowadays, that's really the more editorial work that tends to get kind of noticed. Like images like this where you're kind of playing around with some of the makeup and some of the kind of special effects or the flowers. So I do think that's quite interesting. And I'm just kind of checking the hashtags. So I will say hashtags are a little too common. So I would probably try to find ones again that aren't super popular so that you have that chance of people actually seeing your work underneath the hashtag. So, things where it just says like beauty, or and I think beauty is actually repeated twice, which might be a problem, or just having like photography or photographer. I would really avoid that. I would try to find, tags like, editorial makeup, or if you have brands, any of the brands that you're working with, tag them, hashtag them, because some of those reposts can be useful, if that's something that you want, because it's free advertising, for your work, especially as you're first kind of getting out there and trying to connect with some of these brands. So that's something that I would recommend, just looking through here. And I would love to see a little bit about them because I just see the hashtags. I don't see anything else about it, like really who, kind of what's going on. I see, that they mention the people in it. Like I see the tags at the bottom. And I'm assuming lipstick is, like that's the person doing
Yeah,
makeup.
crazy.
Right. But I wouldn't have organized it in that way. I would have put, like a little bit about the shoot up top and then your team and then whatever hashtags you're trying to put in kind of at the bottom.
Let me ask you a question. Are you coming up with your own hashtags or maybe you
I
have a program for this, like an app or something?
I used to like look at apps where I'd look like, like the best hashtags for a photographer. Like I used to do that and then I just found that they weren't really helpful at all. So I'd research myself. So I'll just go into Instagram and I'll just kind of type in the hashtags and I'll see how many there are underneath that
Mhm.
particular hashtag. And then I'll use that. And again, I try to look for anything that's like 100,000 or less is kind of that area I like to stay in. But I do it myself now. Before, when I started, I didn't. Like I tried to, look at those apps that said like the best fashion photography apps. hashtags, but they would use things like, Instagood or like fashion diaries, which have like 50 million hashtags. So that doesn't help you at all. So I've just gotten to the habit of trying to like look at an image and be like, okay, what can I tag? Like, what's interesting about this? Is it, like sunset eyeshadow? Is it, clean makeup? Is it, like dewy skin? And, I'll check to make sure that tag doesn't have too many. But I try to look at an image ahead of time or a set of images, so I'm not wasting too much time on this. And then I'll kind of look it up and see how many. But I think that, again, I'm going to say the same thing over and over again, that like it's your social media, it takes an investment of time. It really does to manage it the way you want to. And the good news is that it's usually just time. It isn't like your traditional marketing where, you have to spend like 30% of your kind of operating profits to try to market. You can just put in some of your time instead, and hopefully that benefits. But yeah, research as much as you can.
Awesome. And what about the number of hashtags? What do you think about that?
I don't think you're really harmed by going up to that 30. You can only go up to 30, but it's up to you. Again, as far as visually, if you're the type that is not going to put a lot of in your caption, then the hashtags look a bit bloated. It's like too much.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to have, like here's a little bit of, information about this shoot, and, here is the team that was a part of that shoot. Maybe here's some of the products that we use to achieve this shot, and then have your hashtags. I think that you can do any amount. But if it's just going to be like a couple emojis, maybe a couple words, and then 30 hashtags, it might be too much. So I think you have to kind of think of, you're composing your feed and you're composing your captions the same way you should be composing your frames when you're taking a photo. It's all about composition. So I don't think that kind of design should end at the feed or at your captions.
Good. And here we have a question, and I think we should move a little bit faster
Yes, we have
because,
to be quick.
yeah, we have to be quick. So Tim is asking, it's interesting to hear the comments about the wide frames. I think many people choose wide frames because they want to show the whole frame and composition of the full shot without cropping it off. I have to confess, I have gone down the wide frame road.
Oh no. Okay. I mean, it's funny because I always preface like it's my personal preference, because I have had this discussion before where I've been like white frames and people are like, I love white frames, and I'm like, I don't. But my thing is, I'm going to go back to the same point of that you have limited real estate. You have a limited like area of visibility, and I think that you really have to fill it as much as possible. And my kind of feedback to that would be to try to crop at the appropriate Instagram crops. So if you don't want to cut anything off, then shoot at your 4x5 cropping. The kind of 8.5x11, magazine formatting crops, so that you're not having to cut off anything. And I personally do that. Like I shoot now with the intention of knowing how it's going to look when I put it in Instagram, so I don't have to, cut off like a part of a head or a chin or somewhere that's really not opportune for some of the images. So I would just say, like, try to, at least in future work, be thoughtful about how you can crop it to fit, and try to avoid the white frames. But again, that's just my opinion.
I have a funny story about that, and also a little tip. So the story is really fast. On the It wasn't the last, but one of the sem workshops I did. The team that was setting up the equipment um, was like, I just told the guy, just put the camera 4x5 and leave me to do my job. And the guy was like, why do you need it 4x5? Why? And I was like, really? I'm going to explain to you later, because he was not part of the audience. He was supposed to help me during the workshop, and I was so confused. But yes, I completely agree with you. If you know what's the purpose of your photograph, and if it's meant to be on your social media account, and this is, some people just shoot for their social media, and
Yeah,
that's totally fine. If you want to shoot for your social media, just do it 4x5. Better for you, better for the model, especially when you shoot beauty photos.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you for repeating that.
Of course.
And the small tip that I have for you is, when you're actually uploading your photograph, just make sure to I have a template for this,
Hmm.
so I can see how the image is going to look if I have the white frames. And when you have the white frames, the images look so tiny on your feed, and most of the people are looking for some new people to follow with looking at small images,
Hmm.
especially now when the Instagram with all the updates, now we have only these options and only this option, and you can actually see just the small images. You cannot convert your feed when you're exploring.
Right.
So if they're looking at these small images and you have wide frame and your images is that thin compared to an image that is that big because it's 4 by 5,
Right.
think of what am I going to see
I
first.
agree.
Yeah.
Especially too, it's they've teased this before, and it might still happen that they might change to having 4 by 4 on your
Hmm.
feeds as phones get larger, or at least the preference for the quote unquote phablets are kind of becoming more common. That might happen, and of course, all of us doing the 3 by 3 posting might have a slight heart attack when that happens. But I just mention it because that means that your images will be even smaller if you're
Yeah.
using frames. So
So think about it,
yeah.
guys. I
Decide
have
what's best for you.
true. I have more questions for you, but before that, I would like to ask you whether you would mind if we just stick to discussing the whole feed,
Yep,
not
we can do
going
that.
to each and every
I think
image.
so.
Perfect, because this way we'll be, I think, able to help more with the feedback
Hmm.
overall, and we'll be able to answer a little bit more questions. So let's
That
see the
works.
next feed. Okay, let me
Okay,
hide that.
Megan.
It's Megan, passion photographer. This is, oh, here we have a separate personal account.
Okay, nice
Cool.
work, Megan.
It's not written, any, we cannot see anything about the location,
Hmm.
but yeah, at least we have a separate personal account, which is
And
good.
and she's using stories. Good job, Megan.
Yeah, we're not going to click on that right now because
Right,
we
no,
have
but
no
I'm glad that
idea
it's
what we're
there.
going to see. Yeah, but let's take a look. Okay, we have almost like 3 by 3. Not almost. I think we are having three by
Yeah, I
three.
think it's 3 by 3. It's nicely
That's
curated,
very
and
consistent.
it's
Yeah.
good to see a mixture of fashion shows as well as fashion
Mm-hmm.
work. I
Yeah.
think that that's interesting. I would love to know where Megan is though, because I can't guess from
Yeah.
the locations. I have
Let's
no
see.
clue.
Let's see if we have some info on the images. Nope.
Okay.
All black
No.
and white. And
And
that's it.
try to avoid the Insta good
Mm-hmm.
and the fashion hashtags. So if the one thing I will
Fashion
definitely
too.
repeat a lot, no more popular hashtags because it doesn't help
Okay.
you.
This is something that I need to learn too.
Okay.
Must be. Okay.
You said it's a
So
takeaway.
this is from 2016.
Oh,
So
interesting.
we're not
Okay.
that far ahead.
Oh,
Okay,
wow. Okay.
2016. Oh, we have a water mark, which is interesting
Ah,
for me. 2016 again. Okay, it's gone. Very little quotes, but at least we know the motto this time.
mm-hmm.
Okay, what we have here? Okay, we have actually the brands, which is good. You could have tagged them. You
Yeah,
could
I
have
would have I would have
reposted them.
tagged. Are they tagged? Because I see that there's tags.
No, I don't think so. No.
Can you on the image itself? Like I see the
Oh,
little
yeah, you're
icon.
right.
Let's
Yeah,
see. Okay, good.
yeah.
Good. Good
Are you
job,
pretty
Megan.
sure this has
Always
this is the
tag.
right account? Yeah, it's the right
Yeah.
account. Okay, perfect. Good. Okay, 2016 again. What's going on? Am I too far ahead? Let me just take a look.
Okay.
Okay, so this is from
Okay, May
May.
19.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Montreal. Okay, good. So she's from Canada. There we go. I figured out where
Okay,
she's from.
okay, good. Nice. Oh, it's Canada. Canada is so nice. Okay. April.
Okay, April. Okay.
Okay.
And January and
October.
December. So it's a
Yeah.
big skip in time. And Megan, you have lovely work. You should post more of it if
Definitely.
possible.
You should post more often. I think that's the big. takeaway here.
Right. It's a big takeaway because I really enjoy the recent work. I think the fashion show work is also like it's really gorgeous shows. It's definitely not what I have in my particular markets. I would love to have
Mhm.
more things like this. But definitely the biggest kind of tragedy I see is when I'm seeing really great feeds, but they don't post. Please
Yeah,
post as
I don't
often as
even
you
have
can.
I don't even have to scroll a lot to go to 2017 with a big
Right.
summer. So you definitely need to post more. You have all the reasons to have a little bit more confidence because your work is beautiful, and just list your location on your account.
I agree.
Okay, let's go to the next one. This was a quick
Okay.
one.
That was quick. I would love to go on further, but
If you want to, sure, but I think
no, I think we covered the main
yeah,
content. I just mean that I'd love for Megan to have more recent work that we could comment on
definitely.
because I think
Mhm.
it's going in a good direction. It has that kind of mood and kind of good expressions from the models, so it's in the right direction. Just post more of it, Megan.
Yeah. Would you mind if I take a look if she
Yeah, we
has
take a
more?
quick look. Is maybe it's more active there on the
Yeah,
personal account.
that's what I'm interested in.
Okay,
Let's see.
she had
Um,
location that time. Oh, in Melbourne. Okay,
okay, two per day here. Okay, you're
okay.
definitely more active in your
More active on
personal.
the personal. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I would
So I
definitely do
think
the
I think
same.
in this case, Megan's probably a great example of someone that should be using something like a scheduling application to get
Mhm.
the stuff out of the way because clearly a lot of effort and time's gone onto the personal account, and I think it should definitely go into the professional one. So that's I think maybe this is just a concern of time. And
Maybe.
again, I'm guessing, I don't know. So I would think definitely some sort of scheduling application like later, would be a really good a thing to do.
Awesome. Okay. And what do you think about the following followers count? What do you think about that? That's very interesting for me.
Oh, to, kind of in general, or just the numbers
Yeah,
themselves,
just
like
in
kind of your
general.
ratio.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say that you should not be following more than your amount of followers,
Hmm.
typically, because I think if I ever see an account that has like they're following 9,000 people and they have
Hmm.
9,000 followers, it's usually kind of fishy to me. And I know that was kind of a way people tried to get a lot more followers is they would go through and like add, they'd follow everybody, and then they'd go through those apps that deleted a lot at once,
Yeah.
which is do not do that. Don't do
Hmm.
that. I know that they're also punishing that, I believe more so. So that's something that I would not, but I would just say if you're following less people than are following you, you're doing good, regardless of what that number comes to be.
Absolutely agree here. Nothing to add. Just
Okay.
don't unfollow people after you have followed
Don't
them.
do that. Don't
Just
be
don't
that
do it.
person.
Yeah. Okay. Next account. Okay, people I believe are seeing the right thing this
Okay,
time.
good. Okay, so we have a Rich Heaton. Okay, in Hawaii, so we know where he's from.
Perfect.
I don't know necessarily which part
Yeah.
of Hawaii, but
It was on
okay.
purpose. Sorry about that.
So, tiles. I will say you know if I don't like frames, I'm not gonna like tiles. So I have to say I'm not a fan of tiles. Particularly, I'm not a fan for a specific reason, and it's what I mentioned before about the lack of engagement. If you are putting up images that just show kind of like a corner of a shoulder, or part of a hand, it's not going to get really the kind of attention that it could if you just had the full images going through the feed. So I think that at first I thought the tiling was kind of neat, like, oh, that's an interesting way to show your work. But I just think that it tends to hurt engagement in the long run.
Hmm.
And I would much prefer to just see the full images and just see multiple images from the set because he has beautiful photography. It's great work. And I've seen some really great designers that he's working with. Like I know he's working with Keeney from like Project Runway. Is definitely
Hmm.
someone that I recognize throughout his work, and some personalities as well. But I would love to see them all in one, especially in this case where some of the images are kind of pulled apart by the tiling. They don't really, like, because of the white frame, it doesn't always sit perfectly. So I would really have loved to see just one image of them.
Yeah.
If you had to, maybe just the three. Like, I've seen that done pretty successfully for some of the more horizontal shots. Well, they'll just do like 1, 2, and 3. I can live with that, but the nine I think is or more. The nine or more is too much because they're beautiful images. I would love to see all of it at once as a someone in the audience. Okay, so like down here we have that.
Yeah.
I would have
Right
stuck to
there.
that.
But I think it's a very risky thing to separate your images like this, simply
Mhm.
because it means that you're expecting people to click on your profile to take a look at the image. But at the same time, if I'm scrolling and if I just see this image,
Mhm.
trust me, I'm never gonna click your profile,
No,
which
yeah, I
means
would.
you're losing followers for no real reason. And you have good following list, so I would definitely recommend you to stick to just
Yes,
one
more of
image.
this, like what we're currently seeing,
Yeah.
where it's the image and your captions and your tags and your hashtags. I would just try to self-contain it. I think that's definitely the way to go.
Yeah,
And I'm
again, we
checking.
have some very common tags,
Right.
but I kind of like that you're saying who's doing what,
Hmm.
because for me that's important. I always say that the team for me is very important. So even if I'm not super, I just don't have the patience to write down on my phone. It's just
Hmm.
driving me crazy. So that's why I don't have a lot of captions below my images on Instagram. But at the same time, I'm always tagging my team saying who's doing what. For me, this is very
What's
important.
What's also useful, something that I do is I have captions like from one image from a set, and then I'll just adjust them for like
Yeah.
any slight alterations I need to do. So that way I'm not sitting there like wasting time typing through it all. But I still
Absolutely.
get to target everyone that I could. I think the only thing is I'm not sure if he is tagging the people in his team. He mentions them, which is good. I'm a huge big proponent
Yeah,
of being
he's not
give credit,
tagging them.
credit your team, please. Like it's they
Hmm.
all deserve to be credited. But I think I don't know, maybe they just don't have an Instagram account. But I would have loved to just see direct ones to them too.
Yeah, and also this type of tagging people,
Oh, where they stack
it's
them.
not really working for me.
I've seen that quite a few times, and another thing that I would just say to please not do because you can't get to them because they're stacked, so there's no way
Hmm.
to get to them. I'm actually surprised Instagram lets you do that. It doesn't make much sense. They should let you have a way of accessing it.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, Rich's images are beautiful. Like, it's a really great portfolio. I would just love to see, like the recent images. I just want to see the images and not the spread out kind of tiles, because it's a
Absolutely.
really great. They're great projects. They're great sets. The great studio work, great on location work, great use with the various designs and some of the concepts. So that is all definitely there. It's just for me, it's the presentation as a whole that I would like to see adjusted.
Yeah, definitely. I think you should stick to just one image, because right now, even if you're posting this one, you're posting it at the same day, and
Hmm.
you have how many images? 12 images posted at the same day. Again, the algorithm is not working in your favor. So think about that the next time. And think also about the tagging.
Yeah.
I don't recommend you to just tag them all at the center of your image. That's also not a good idea, because every time a person is trying to actually like your image, see the tags, and this is not a favor.
Hmm.
But you can always put like the tag over here or over here, for example, and it's going to work better.
Agreed. Yeah, I tend to frame my pictures with kind of the tags
Hmm.
because obviously when you do a lot of fashion and beauty work, you have a million things you have to tag. So that's what I would definitely say. But I think, yeah, again, to our point of the tiling that can kind of hurt engagement a little bit. This image has over 400 likes, which is good. But if you scroll over some of the tiling ones, they have a much like lower amount, like their 60s or their 80s. So I think that it makes a lot more sense just to stick to the altogether.
It's
images.
always very confusing for me. What am I supposed to like?
That
Which
too.
part? So, yeah. Okay. I think we had some good words to say over here. And let's go to the next account.
Okay, so Femi
Okay.
and okay, Logos. Okay.
Creative artist and photographer. Here we have some sort of other account. I'm not quite sure.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so is that like a studio? I'm
I
actually
think
curious to
it's
see that.
yeah, I think it's a studio. I'm quite sure.
Okay. Okay, so
Photography,
photography
production,
production.
consultant. Hmm.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Now I know that you're dealing with a lot of stuff just related to one thing, which is a
Right.
good thing. Okay, 3 by 3 again. I think many people are actually big fans of 3 by 3. And here we have this thing that we already talked about when we have the full length and we have a crop.
Hmm.
Again, this and this crop are very similar. So I would just probably put this one in between, think about it a little bit more, probably change one of the photos if I have some additionals.
I would also say to be careful of if your subject is facing the same way in
Yeah.
every shot, because that can be something that they kind of notice. It's beautiful photography, though. The fashion images are really quite stunning, in these sets. But and I do appreciate the 3 by 3. I'm not seeing white frames, so that gets a positive vote from me as we go throughout. And some of the beauty images here are really quite lovely, particularly the ones with kind of like the towel wrap is quite lovely as well on that. And these, so we have some captions. So we have, kind of I like the dare to be bold. It's interesting, dare to be different. All the credits are there. Good
Without
job.
tagging, yeah, great.
It's nice and clean, so that part's there. Minimal on the hashtags, which can be fine. It's up to you. Like the hashtags,
Yes.
I tend to bring about like 10 to 25% of traffic to my own images.
Mhm.
So that's kind of up to some people decide to do them, some don't. But that's kind of the effect that I see. So those are fine for the most part. Editorial's not too common, so
Well,
that part is strong.
it was very nice that you mentioned what is drawing, how much is the percent that the hashtag is drawing
Hmm.
people to your work. What do you think is actually one of the main thing that can bring to the people more and more followers?
Yeah, so I think the thing that's most important, I mean, it's really just posting consistently, I would say is the biggest thing, just because you're increasing your chances of someone kind of stumbling upon your work. But I'd say really the most important thing is putting out work you're proud of. I think it's really a big piece. If you're trying to kind of grab their attention, it starts with having quality work to put out there. But I would say that honestly, above anything else, regardless of what you do, just post consistently. That's it. Like I think that that's kind of the most that you can do. You can always kind of give yourself a slight edge by really having those, well researched hashtags and tagging different people and different brands and hoping that those same people will share your work and therefore give you some more visibility. Because I think it's all about engagement. You don't want to put your work out there and then never go into the community and never see what other photographers are doing and what other artists are doing. So I think it starts with getting your work out there. Number one, post. Please post as much as you can with work that you're proud to show.
Post, and also I think it's also very important to engage with the people that are actually giving you comments,
Mm,
because
that
if you
too.
just leave them there, it's kind of rude too.
No, I agree. I personally make that effort to like and I comment back, thank you so much. And I definitely try to engage with the audience. I think people tend to appreciate that because again, that increases that human element that this is someone that I am following, that I'm engaging with. It's not just a brand. So I think that that's an edge up. So you're absolutely right that engaging in the comments is definitely a great way to go. And it makes the kind of your followers feel a little bit more appreciated.
Yeah, sometimes even if I don't have the time to comment on everything at the same day, I'm taking the time to do it on the next one.
Mhm.
Okay, so here Megan says, I really curated my feed lately. Really? Was, was it in a preparation for this review?
I'm actually curious if it was.
Right? So you can tell us if so. Okay, let's go to the next account while we are waiting for Megan's answer.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey, we saw this one. Oh my God, it's the last one.
Oh my gosh,
Again,
okay.
very active um, person in the Facebook group. Okay, I got something in my eye, but we're just gonna skip that.
Okay. Well, I do see their account. So I'm seeing Instagram stories. So good job, Arturo. I see
Awesome.
really actually I appreciate the descriptions. I appreciate okay, I know that they're a fashion and beauty photographer. They've mentioned they've been published in Vogue UK. I appreciate that they're putting their dates of where they're going to be. That is very smart if you are a traveling photographer. Because that's especially if you're, booking dates, you're booking jobs that just lets people know where you're going to be. So very good. That's definitely smart. I like what I see on the description. I think they're using that appropriately.
I completely agree with you. I think this is very smart and a good way to show the people, not just to your clients, even to the other creators that would like to work with you. For example, some makeup artists, or
Hmm.
somebody who just admires your work, they can be in touch very easily.
Absolutely.
3 by 3 again.
Hmm.
Last time we were discussing this photo. Haha. See, I remember. Okay. Okay, another photo that I know.
It's a very curated feed, which I definitely like. That it's doing the 3 by 3. I actually quite like the presentation of the kind of year in review
Mhm.
post as well. I think when it's something that's thoughtful like that, I appreciate it. And it's not overdone. Like a few little things here and there, I think it is great. And
Look at the captions.
that's very detailed captions. Good
Right?
job.
Okay, what about the tags? Oh my
Let's
god, do
see.
we know where
So
he's
fashion, no. Try to avoid fashion. I'm also not sure how good the like Canada, Chicago, like New York tags. I think that the kind of country or state based
going?
ones might be a little overdone. So that might be a little bit harder. I would probably do something like New York photographer or Chicago photographer. I think that you'd see more success as a way of amending that. Same with
Mhm.
USA, like maybe American photographer, maybe could work. But I would just try to find ways of drilling down and making things a little bit more specific. And in fact, I'm just curious. Like I'll look it up what that like a hashtag of like New York would come up as is how many that there are. So let's see. So New York's hashtag has 66 million posts.
Whoa.
So if I go into that and I refresh, I'm seeing completely new things every single time. And that's really not what you want. You want to have that chance to become one of the top posts of those hashtags. Because in a lot of hashtags, they show like that top 6 or so images that are like that Instagram's kind of picked up. So I think you again increase your chances so long as you keep those numbers low. So try to stay under 500,000. Try to stay under 100,000 is even better, because then you have that chance of benefiting more so from the hashtags.
Awesome. Perfect. So Megan says that she did not curated her um, Instagram feed because of the portfolio, but because she listened to one of our previous podcasts. So uh, I'm very glad and happy to know that we are so helpful.
that is good. That is good. Post more, Megan. You have great work. Want to see more of it.
Perfect. Okay. Let's share again the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Overall, beautiful work. Very well curated. I like how everything is so clean.
It is very clean. That's something that I noticed, and it kind of seems like the fashion images are focused on the wardrobe, and the closer up portraits are kind of more focused on the person, which I appreciate. I think I even see like I appreciate that our show kind of talks about like what he's doing in the images. I think there's nothing wrong with that kind of sharing in the journey as a
Hmm.
photographer, like testing with new
Exactly.
colors or, testing with posing. I think that's good. I think those are a great way to go. So like working on that color game, and more interesting poses as they had in that caption. I think that's great. It's a great way to engage with your audience. I think that a lot of photographers tend to follow other photographers, so I think they appreciate that. But then also, potential clients or models or, people that might follow you also love to see that, especially because again, it just adds that personal touch to it that is still in line with your branding. And you'll hear me say that a lot, that it's got to make sense for your brand.
But you're completely right. So you can repeat it as many times as you want.
Good. I'll keep saying it.
Over here, you can see the pure example why if you are shooting for your Instagram account, you definitely need to shoot 4 by 5 because right now those lines are not helping. As you
Hmm.
can see, the images look very different from these, and I'm definitely going to look at this one instead of
Hmm.
this one. So,
No,
guys, you
I
can
agree.
definitely think about that a little bit more when you're uploading, and you can use one of the recommendations that Kendra had. If you're not sure if you want to upload your images somewhere and you prefer to do it by hand, we actually have a template. It's absolutely free in one of the previous shows. I'll do make sure to post it in the captions below the video. So I think it's going to be helpful for you too. This was the last account that we had to see, in fact. And I'm very grateful for all of you guys for all the submissions. You were super amazing for posting. It was about time for you to become braver. So I'm very happy to have you around. Kendra, what do you think was the main takeaway today?
I think things I kind of noticed were just spending a little bit more time, I'd probably say, on the presentation of your social media. I think things like even simple things like putting your location or researching the hashtags or putting in captions and kind of telling a little bit more about your work, I think was kind of the overall thing. And then, of course, post as often as you can is always,
Correct.
I think, the overarching theme. So post consistently and just be thoughtful about what it is that you're posting and those details that coincide with it.
That's a great advice. And again, you can think about those white bars.
Yes,
But
the
it's
frames.
important. It is important because, as you saw in the last example, people are going to be just captured more by the big photo that they can see. It's the same when you go to a gallery. If there
Yeah.
is a gigantic frame, you're gonna look at it, even if Mona Lisa is right next to it.
No, that's very true.
Thank you so much for being with us today. It was
Of
amazing
course.
honor to be with you. It was
Thank you.
super, super nice. I loved it. If you guys have any comments, you can leave it under the video. And you have to know that Kendra and me, we're both doing portfolio reviews and just like a little one-on-one conversation with you guys. Of course, we do it paid, so you can contact us both, and you can see how you can improve your work and do it even better. So, if you want to add something, Kendra, you know where to follow her.
I
Do you want
I
to?
I know. I think we've said quite a lot today. I just hope that some of the feedback that we've given will be helpful because I think that especially in this industry, that it's sometimes hard-won facts when it comes to what steps to take to succeed. So I do hope that some of what we said has been useful and that you guys will put it into practice. But beyond that, I do always try to engage with people in the industry. So please do feel free to reach out and contact me if you have any other further questions on that.
Perfect. Thank you so much again for being with us. And thank you guys for all being with us and for taking the time to listen to us. And if you like this video, don't forget to push the button with a thumb up. And of course, to subscribe to the channel. You know where to find Kendra. If you have some doubts about it, you can just see the description of the video, and there you're going to find her Instagram account straight away. So thank you so much again for being with us, and thank you, Kendra.
Of course.
See you soon.
Bye.